I'm going to introduce the panelists, Megha Anand from KASS International, Computer Science and Masters in Intellectual Property Law. Immersing herself in the world of IP, she has had several years' experience at a well-established IP firm in India, where she developed her expertise in software patent drafting and prosecution. So at KASS, she's involved in the drafting, in the drafting and prosecution of patent applications, the areas of computer science, IT, telco, electronics, civil engineering, and other fields in the engineering domain. And so apart from having drafted more than 60 provisional patent applications, over 75 complete and patent edition patent applications, and conducting prior art patentability and novelty searches. All right, Jason Khong from Apptivity Lab. He's got a very long bio, which I managed to, deduce to 3 paras. I'll read 2 of that. He's a proud Monash University graduate. Okay, so Jason was named on the list of 20 CTOs to watch by CIO Asia magazine in 2009. The same year he started his company. So Apptivity Lab has a range of award-winning apps under its belt, with a client base stretching beyond Malaysia and Australia from diverse sectors. Some of the awards and accolades include finalists for the Australian Star Trek Online Retail, not Trek, but Track Industry Awards, a Blue Sky Mobile Shopping App, and Asia Pacific Shopping Centre Awards for New Media, Emerging Technology for the Sunway Pyramid mobile app. My Taxi and Homestay are 2 examples. He and his team that have apps that they've developed for social impact. Of course, you all know My Taxi / Grab Taxi. And of course, Homestay, which is an app project commissioned by the Malaysian Ministry of Tourism, aiming to connect rural villages with high-tech inbound tourists. And our moderator for today, Wong Jin Nee, from Wong Jin Nee and Teo. She's a partner of the intellectual property and technology legal practice at this company. She's a registered patent agent. Some people say patent, some people say patent. A registered trademark agent and registered industrial agent in Malaysia. Her areas of specialization include licensing and franchising, brand protection enforcement, public policy, government outreach, and engagement. They're all experts. And basically, fun fact, I'll have to introduce Jeannie's fun fact, and she'll talk about other people's fun facts. She enjoys yoga as well as food. And with that, I'll pass on to Jeannie.
Thank you very much, Vida, for the interesting introduction. There are no slides, so we're going to make it very informal, interactive. Oh, it's not on, is it? See, it's very challenging. Awesome. Now it's on. But I'm sure you could hear me. Well, we are talking about app generation, the impact of IP in the era of apps.
You want to try this one first?
Oh, it doesn't work either.
Not yet.
Okay.
Right, it's a small room. Okay, it works. Does it work now? Yes. Okay. It gives me great pleasure to moderate this session. It's a very interesting, stimulating topic. With the high penetration of smartphones, tablets, and other mobile devices, apps, or is actually apps. It's an abbreviation for applications, are increasingly becoming part of our everyday life. For all age groups. We have apps for every single thing imaginable, from lifestyle to anything, cooking, whatever. And yet we have new apps being conceived and developed every day. So in today's session, we have 2 very distinguished speakers. And I'm going to start off by asking Jason to give us, a brief overview of, the steps and processes involved in the conception and development of apps. So it gives us an idea, and then later on we'll get Megha to talk about the IP issues. Okay, and by all means, if you have any question, if you have anything to share, jump in, because we want to make it very interactive. All right, okay, Jason.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to try to bring a very geeky topic into a slightly more English version, right? So what it takes to build an application. Okay, so typically what happens in our company, I come from Apptivity Lab. We build apps for tech startups, we build apps for corporations, we build apps for government agencies. So somebody somewhere usually comes up with an idea, and then they send us an email, and we sit down and we talk about it. Right, so it can be a tech startup like, say, My Taxi. They've got this amazing idea to connect passengers to taxi drivers. But how do we actually make that thing run? Or it can be a government agency. We just launched some apps with SPAD or Ministry of Tourism. So they've got some idea of like how they're going to use apps to serve consumers better, how they're going to use apps to engage with their users, with their the segments that they serve. So they've got, usually it starts off with some business requirement, or in the case of tech startups, it starts off with identifying some area which there's some idea of how something can be done. So at this stage, we call that the ideation stage. So they sit down, they come with the domain expertise. So we actually don't know taxis very much. We don't know tourism very much. We don't know about public transit. But these are domain experts. I mean, they are in the field. They take it day in, day out. They've seen opportunities that they think apps can help. So they come together, we sit around a table, bring a lot of whiteboards, bring a lot of pens and papers, and we start drawing out what we think an app can do. So what Apptivity Lab does is we bring the mobile technology to the table, and we say, oh, if you want to do something like see where the taxis are, this is something you can do. You can you can use this map, and on the map you can see the taxis, and then you can have a button here that when you press the button, some sort of algorithm happens, which then helps you to find the nearest taxi, connects with the nearest taxi, brings the guy to you, you can see him moving. So these are the mobile user interface, usability, user experience ideas that we bring to the table. Okay, so at some point, everybody thinks, oh, that's very cool, let's build this. So, we've got a lot of paper, we've drawn screens, so from here it goes here, to this other screen, it goes to another page. We call that like a wireframe. Or like think of it like a flow chart of what happens from step 1 to step 2 as you use the application. So all that, you can see how the idea is slowly becoming more and more tangible, right? So you've got start off with some business requirements, some idea, and it becomes into a tangible form where you start drawing out wireframes. You say, oh, on this screen, this is what's supposed to happen, and so on. And then what happens next is that our team starts doing things like the design. So we start drawing out exactly how it's going to look like. At the same time, the developers, the programmers, the coders will start implementing the designs and the ideas, implementing algorithms. Algorithms are essentially, think of it like instructions for the computer. So it starts off with some sort of a recipe in that sense, but somebody has actually got to put into code. So the programmers put those things into code, and then after some magic process of a few weeks or maybe a couple of months, you have a tangible form, the app running in the phone. That's what the users see. And then you've got this whole bunch of source code which was written in order for the app to run on the phone. So in a nutshell, I've just compressed about 3 months of work into about 10 minutes. Yeah, does that help?
Yeah, that's great. I suppose Megha will give her input on the IP. I mean, when the clients come to you, do they actually get you to sign NDA, immediately, because before they disclose their ideas to you? And then maybe Megha can jump in after Jason has mentioned, and then what are the IP issues that they?
All right, sure, very good question. So it depends on who it is and what the idea is. Say, for example, we just launched something with Astro a couple of months back. Now, Astro, you guys know who Astro is, what they do, right? So they built a very straightforward content application. We call it a content application because most of the things inside are recipes. There's a recipe app. It's called Chef Astro. So they will supply the content based on their shows, and then becomes a browsing experience. That's quite a straightforward application. So they didn't ask us for an NDA on day one. Right, so they might have I think later on maybe they did ask for it, but they don't start off by saying, okay, give me an NDA before I tell you my idea. All right, okay. On the other hand, a lot of tech startups or people who are whose main value in the application is the technology, they will come and sit down and say, I've got a really good idea to solve traffic jam problem, but I can't tell you that idea until you sign the NDA with me. And so it really depends on the angle of the app, whether it's going to have a lot of content or whether it's going to have a lot of technology or unique ideas that's going to be wrapped in the app. Yeah, do you want to add on?
IP issues. So, like Jason just explained to us that the whole cycle of software life development, IP comes in from the very beginning when a customer reaches them. to start developing their software. So the first stage, like he said, is requirement gathering, wherein you call domain experts and you discuss regarding what the app is supposed to do and how it's supposed to do. At that stage, you're actually requirement gathering, and that's the time when copyrights comes in, because all the paperwork wherein you say the blueprint, okay, this is my foundation for my app. So that is the time where you draw all the diagrams, the designs, they all become subject matter of copyright. That's also a part wherein you sign the NDAs, because you don't want, the basic crux of any IP is that it has to be new before it is protected or filed with the patent office. So to maintain that newness, it is very essential that an NDA, as a non-disclosure agreement, is signed with your customers or with developers when you discuss regarding your applications. So at the initial stage, we're looking at copyrights, trade secrets, and NDAs coming in. As they start developing or coding the software, that's when you know how, okay, it's an algorithm is ready, you know how you're going to achieve your app. That's the time you decide, okay, should it be a copyright still, or can I go for a patent right? Can it be a patent application? So right when they are coding is the time when you file your patent application, because you actually know how are you going to achieve what's going to be the app, or what's the function of the app. Likewise, when they proceed further and they're about to launch the product, you already know your product name, the brand name, and that's the time when trademarks come in the picture. So basically, IP comes at every stage of the development life cycle, and it's up to us how do we identify and harness and protect that IP. So IP is created automatically. It's up to us how do we enforce and recognize it. So that's the legal part of you, that you should know whether you're generating designs, trademarks, patents, and how do you protect them at that stage.
I think a lot of people out there would be wondering, apps. Do you file for patent for apps, right? Or do you protect merely using copyright? When do you think that it is appropriate to file for patent? And also from IP owner's point of view, I know Jason is merely the service provider. He's developing for the IP owner. But do you conduct due diligence? What if your apps may have infringed the party's rights? When do you start doing that? Perhaps two of you can weigh in on this. You start off with on the patent issue.
Okay, regarding due diligence, as per my experience, whenever people come to us, they come to us only after the product is launched and it's a success. Nobody comes before the app is launched. So that's a major issue here, because like I said, for every IP, the major part is it has to be new. So it is new when you're actually conceptualizing it or developing how you're going to go about it. So the major thing is that the newness has to be maintained. So due diligence is essential, because you should first do a search to see whether this IP exists. If it exists, how do you want to make yourself look different? So a due diligence process is really essential and has to be done before you launch the process and not after. And whether you choose patent rights or copyright, a copyright is automatic. The minute you get your source code in any tangible format, be it paper or a disk, you automatically get copyright in it. So it is automatic, but patent rights are something like you have to actually sit and say, what is the technical problem I am trying to achieve? So the technical problem itself becomes your patent rights. So how do you choose between copyrights and patents? There's a very simple example I can give you here. For example, I'm writing a book on recipes, and I publish that book in the market. Somebody buys that book and actually starts a restaurant and uses the recipes to cook lovely food, and he's making money out of it. Now, because he's bought my book, my copyright is gone there. So he's free to reuse that book to make recipes and make money. I cannot tell him, oh, you're making money from my recipes, please pay me some royalty. No, my copyright is gone. Whereas, if I had patented my recipes as food patents, or I could have stopped him saying, oh no, you cannot use them. These are patented recipes. I need a license fee for it. So that's the difference between copyright and patents. You cannot enforce copyright as much as you can enforce patent rights. Also in copyright, like for source code, minor changes makes a different source code get another copyright. So you cannot enforce copyrights when slight changes are made to source code. So it's not a very enforceable right per se. So that's my take on how do you select between patents and copyrights. And due diligence is definitely necessary to ensure that you are new and you do not get into litigation issues later because you're infringing on somebody else's rights, IP rights in the market.
Just a question, do you, so you're saying that once the app is launched and it's successful, because 99.99% of apps are not successful, so it's logical to only want to protect it when you see that it's gaining traction. Like the Angry Bird guys didn't know it's going to succeed, right? They didn't patent it at the drawing stage. So you're saying at the point when it's showing some traction and they go and see an IP lawyer to want to begin the process, are you saying it's too late at that point then, based on the laws of patent?
Yeah, based on the laws of patent, it's too late because IP has to be generated at the time you are actually conceptualizing the idea. So to handle this situation, you have something like provisional applications wherein you don't incur money much upfront. So you file a provisional application, you're given 1 year to develop, code and launch a product. And if you see success, and then you go ahead with the formal procedures. So there is help at hand. But the thing is you have to act when you're conceptualizing the idea itself.
Okay. What about copyrights? Like earlier you mentioned that if you sold your book and someone's making money out of it,
Right.
there goes your copyright. But what if you haven't sold your book or you're not selling your book?
Then it's just kept secret.
So
It's a trade secret per se.
okay.
But
I think your question is basically the taking ideas from the book. Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Right. Because you see, copyright doesn't protect ideas.
Yeah.
I can take your idea and wrote another book that I will not infringe your copyright. That's what
Right.
Megha is saying.
Right.
Right. So, but patent, the protection of patent is very powerful. It protects the idea. So that person who takes the whatever.
yeah, so basically patents protect the function of what you do. No matter how you do it, doesn't matter. Like for example, source code, the same source code can be written in a different way for the same application. He might be a very good scheduling algorithm, somebody else might be a lousy one, but both achieve the same function. So both are independent copyrights. Whereas for patents, no matter what algorithm you use, as long as the end product is the same, you would still infringe it. So that's the thing. That's why patent rights are always stronger than copyrights.
Okay.
This is not just a Malaysian problem, right? When you say entrepreneurs come and want to patent something when it's successful, correct?
Right,
Yeah,
that's worldwide.
Jason, do you have anything to add to that?
So what I'm going to try to do is to give the layman's view on things, right? And then Megha will continue to guide us in terms of how legally we should approach it, right? So typically when somebody comes to us and they say, oh, I've got this idea, I want to build something like this. In terms of on the developer's part, what due diligence we do, basically it's there are things that we do and things we don't do. So on some situations, we would try not to look at any competing applications. So if we know that we're trying to build something that, say, for solving traffic jams, for example, sometimes we actually choose not to look at other applications that they try to solve it, but we don't do that so much from the patent's point of view. We do that from the originality point of view. We try to start off with a fresh piece of paper and think, if today we built something for solving traffic jams, how would we do it? Because from where we come from, technology moves so fast. Today is actually, this morning at 1 a.m., Apple just announced their iOS 9 along with Mac OS El Capitan 10.11. This just happened at 1 a.m. this morning. 2 weeks ago at Google I.O., Google announced Android M, which is again brand new. So pretty much every single year we get a new set, like 1,000 to 5,000 new capabilities that we can use in the mobile space. So the nice thing about starting fresh is that we can use the freshest ideas, the freshest technologies without being tied to something that was done previously. So one thing that we try to practice is that to start afresh, to think if today we did something, how would we do it? So that's one approach we take, which the idea is to keep us away from stepping into a minefield of following something that somebody else has done before. Now, of course, there are sometimes people come to us and say, oh, that app, we just want something just like that lah. Then we'll look at them and say that, all right. Then we'll try to draw them back to what are you really trying to solve, and bring them back to the place of the business requirements, the objectives of the app, and then come up with new solutions again. Now, the better question is what happens after we've come up with some pretty good solution? What happens then? Like a very good example is My Taxi. So we built with them when it was very early on. This was before when they had something like 800 taxis. So the after we built something with them, I think that same year, 3 to 5 other people came to us saying that we want something just like that. Right, very typical. So they come and say, we want something exactly like that, just do the same thing for us. So our stand is very clear. Once we've built something with a client, we do a exclusive within that space. So we don't build the same thing twice. So that prevents us from accidentally kind of reusing something that we've done before to solve a function. To do that again for somebody else, because that's a clear conflict on our part. So we try to avoid it entirely. And this is a real business problem. We're working on an app which I'll try not to tell you too much details about, right? So we're working on an app. Okay, it solves a problem with meeting up with people. We started talking to them about 6 months ago and started building it about a month ago or 2 months ago, somewhere there. All right, so it's in progress, in development. In the time that we agreed to do it with this new tech startup, we've had 2 other inquiries with very similar ideas. So what should we do? Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Megha to deal with that tricky situation. You know, what happens if there are like 3 different ideas with the same objective or the same sort of idea? How should people handle that?
Before Megha answer, I just want to ask a question because you were involved in helping us with our first, app as well,
Yep.
at BFM.
That's right.
But that's just a functional app. You know what I mean? So it's that has no. It's so people can download it, so people can listen to us. So another radio station can come to you and do the same thing. It's nothing new. So where is that? It's a functional.
Where do we draw the line, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think, sorry, that was a very good question. So when we built BFM app, it was a radio station app. We had certain ideas that we built in there, podcasts, live streaming. But those are very generic apps, right? Like any other radio station would have live streaming app, would have live streaming, for example. In cases like that, where the idea or the approach is not new, we're okay with it, and usually the client also knows it because, like, say for BFM, the core business is to run a radio station, not a technology. Whereas with a technology startup, their core business is the uniqueness of how they solve that specific problem. Does that answer the question? Yeah. So in the cases where it's a generic, I should say generic. If it's a known function, if it's open in the market, everybody sees it. It's a clear, every radio app should have that, then there are no exclusivity to that. But if we do find something within the project that is like never been done before, there's a very BFM approach to doing something, then we will leave that as a BFM exclusive. Yeah.
Okay. Regarding multiple ideas we create at the same time, so under the patent law, it's simple. They say the person first to file will own the rights. So whoever who comes to you, whoever is the first one to actually protect that idea with the patent office via patent application or a copyright, be it whatever patent right it is, or maybe design right for the layouts, whoever is the first one to file gets the rights. So it's as simple as that. Whoever is second, third would not get exclusivity to that idea or the application.
So the next question is, for a generic app like BFM, if BFM goes and file the patent for that app, what happens next? So
the thing is, for filing for a patent, you have 3 criteria. It has to be new, it has to be inventive, and industrially applicable. So newness cannot be challenged because it's the first ones to do it. But when it comes to inventive step, that's a big burden. You have to prove that it is not obvious for a person in the industry for such an app to exist. So for me, it's obvious that you want to download and upload information. It's not that you are it's not the first time this is happening in today's scenario. So it's not inventive. So that's why they would not get a patent right for it. And also because there are businesses in the same space which need that as a basic necessity, you know. So you cannot gain monopoly on something which is a basic necessity. So they would not, yeah, so they would not per se get a patent right for it because it's not inventive. So yeah, that's how they would solve the problem.
And, yeah, okay, great. Yes?
Sorry, I would just like to ask, when you file for patent, do you file the codes or the idea or the app itself?
So when you file for a patent, basically, like I said, it's the idea, it's the function, and how do you achieve it is what gets protected. So source code goes under copyrights. So every IP right has a different purpose. Copyrights protects the source code, and patents would be the functionality and how do you achieve it. Is that the answer?
Yeah, because like how you mentioned it's like Angry Bird, right?
Right.
I've seen other apps that work the same way. They just
Right.
do that kind of jumping thing.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Is that
But do they have patent rights? No, no. Yeah, but similarly, there's a game called Supercell, Clash of Clans or Heyday, if you play those games, they have patent rights there. So they actually protect not how do you play the game, but they protect how do they enhance the user interface for you to play it so effectively. Your touch-based system, how does it work smoothly? So they have patent rights for those, and then they have monopoly in those kind of user interfaces. Nobody could copy a similar touch-based movement or I think convenience in using the user interface without licensing from them. So there are apps for gaming, but I'm not sure if Angry Birds per se has a patent right or no.
But is that patented in Malaysia or somewhere else? Because there's always a question whether software, computer software per se, is patentable in Malaysia because of our exclusion, right?
Locally also we've had people approaching us for software apps, protecting them. Again, the criteria becomes, is it solving a technical problem? If it is, and if we can draft a patent application to show that it's actually a solution to a necessity which, like for example, IP rights are basically to solve a particular problem. If I'm solving a problem and it's technical in nature, you can automatically get a patent right. So irrespective whether it's software or not software. So yeah, so we do have, and also because Malaysia is a part of Paris Convention, patents generated in US also get protected here. So IBM, being the biggest software developer, they do have patents in Malaysia as well, which are granted. So per se, we do have apps protected here and granted here.
Excuse me. Yes.
Hi, Megha. Okay. How
you shouldn't be asking this question.
I want to. Okay, I'm one of her clients. Okay, how you identify the technical characters in a patent, in a disclosure from the inventor? Because the inventor is always claim that their invention has a technical, it's a solved technical problem in their field. But how you identify the technical character in a software patent?
Yeah, Masuri, thank you. It's like a very gray area when it comes to software patenting, and I totally understand what is a technical problem in software. Because per se, they say that it's easier to conceive ideas when it comes to software applications than mechanical products or pharmaceutical, because all these areas require a lot of R&D as compared to we doing flowcharts and drawings and getting an idea. So a technical problem in software, it's made easier for us by they're giving us some categories wherein inventions in security, like encryption algorithms, are termed to be technical because they help you secure your financials, your banks, your email accounts. So any solutions in encryption domain are considered to be of a technical nature and deemed to be solving a technical problem. Similarly, inventions in areas like image processing, like robotics, or anything to do with recognizing images is also deemed to be a solving a technical problem. So these two areas per se are deemed to be any invention in this domain is supposed to be of technical nature. Other than that, if the invention is not a normal number crunching, like in you're calculating something and displaying on the screen, if it's not that, then it's again technical. Second thing is you're uploading data, storing data, downloading data, basically only transforming data into a new form without much processing in it. So mere display of information is not considered technical. So these two, leaving these two, everything else could be looked in light of solving a technical problem. So mere number crunching and mere display of data is not considered to be technical. Apart from that, we could have to discuss and understand what are you actually doing to advise you. Like for example, I'll take your My Taxi app now. Per se, you would say it's software per se. There's just booking online and a taxi comes to you and picks you up. That's it. So why file a patent for My Taxi? It's as simple as that. But if you go to see, it's not that. When you click for, okay, I want to go from here to here, find me a cab. Now, when they find a taxi for you, they're actually running a scheduling algorithm saying which is the nearest taxi to you, which is the one available for you. So you're actually solving a multi-objective problem to actually identify a right cab for you. On top of that, if you say that, okay, I want boot space in the taxi, or I don't want a CNG cylinder in the taxi, they have another complexity added saying, okay, now filter out taxis which do not suit this criteria. So they're actually solving a multi-objective problem which gives it a technical nature. So the My Taxi app per se would not be, it is patentable in a way because the scheduling algorithm gives it that nature of solving a technical problem. Masuri, is that the answer? Thank you so much.
How much, sorry.
Kanji, go right.
Go.
How many, you mentioned code, you say it can take a few weeks to a few months. I spoke to a startup on Friday. They're building an Android app and they say it's going to take 6 months. And then the founder of Friendster, when I spoke to him also, this was via Skype, he said they're building an app and it's going to take 6 months. And I was struck by how long it is. And he said that's normal for building a good app, and you've got probably 1 million lines of code, in the background. So can you share your own, thoughts on this? What a genuinely good app, but how long should it really take?
The standard answer is it depends. So what does it depend on? It depends on the complexity of the app. What are the features within the application, whether there's a lot of features or very few features. It depends also on the project team, whether there's a lot of changes or whether there's very few changes. We do stand with rolling out things as soon as possible. So you can think of software as like tending a garden, right? At some point it gets good, but at every stage is present. There's this methodology called being agile. So the agile methodology is this: rather than decide what you want to see in 6 months' time, you decide a direction you want to go for the next 6 months, and then you review it on a weekly basis or every 2 weeks. So what we try to do is that with as soon as possible, we will come up with, say, the flow charts and the diagrams. The next stage, and usually every stage we normally push to deliver within weeks, not months. So within weeks, we want to come up with what is known as a minimum viable product. Think of it as the alpha version of your app, like super ugly skeleton. And then a few weeks later, you get like the beta version of the app, which is like probably more feature complete. And then it goes on to polish it every couple of weeks. Usually, we try to send things out on a weekly or even on a daily basis, depending on how involved the project team is. And so the time frame really depends on things like that. So complexity of the project, the number of features, how much changes or how much fine-tuning and tweaking it takes along the way. And at which point does it become good or good enough? Because at some point it should be pushed out to the public for people to actually give feedback. Because whatever we think is, it's within the circle, within the group. We've looked at it every day, 8 hours a day for the past 30 days. Whatever we think is probably a little bit biased. But the moment you get out of the room and you test it with your users, they're going to have a whole other set of comments and feedback to say. I guess the right answer to your question is a non-answer. We don't give a time limit. We do say the time range. Like we normally do it in 3 to 6 months, but because we're a team that focuses on just mobile apps, so we've done this for the past 8 years now. Yeah, we've got our own libraries to make things faster. So our delivery time will be different from a team that's just, say, a startup team with a freshie trying to do the coding. So that helps. Yeah, it depends on the skill of the development team as well as the requirements, as well as the project team and where it hits. But usually it's a continuum. So at some point it gets good enough. And even when it's good enough, we normally say, great, now what do you want to do for version 2? Because Apple changes their operating system every year. Android does that every year. Should your business, should your government agency be thinking about adapting to changes on a yearly basis or half-yearly or quarterly basis?
Hear that, then one part of my mind saying these guys are just trying to keep making money from me, telling me you got to keep doing it. Because most people don't have the, the budget, right, to keep upgrading their app. So that's why they say just give me a good app, at the end of 3 months or 6 months, then I may come back after 6 months and give you a new set of features, not this continual development, because there's a time cost involved, right? And then you also worry that your first version or second version is not so good, and then your customer says, this app is lousy, I'm going to switch to another one. So in the real world, do you find these two issues cropping up also? They must, right?
Yes, they do. So like you mentioned earlier, someone said it takes 6 months to develop an app, right? We would then try to say, why don't you do it in sets of 3 months or 2 months, 2 months, 2 months? So that way, rather than building rather than spending 6 months on one version, spend 2 months on your version 0.3, another 2 months on your version 0.6, and 2 months on your version 0.9. So that way you get to test the market sooner. What you said is true. People don't want to be looking at their development on a continuous basis. We do because we are developers. So what we then recommend is that so if you're ready to spend 6 months on development and you want to upgrade it every 6 months, then it's continuous lah. If you're ready to spend 6 months on development but you upgrade it on an annual basis, we would then say, hey, why don't you do it? Why don't you spend 3 months and then test it in the market for 3 months, spend another 3 months in development and another 3 months in the market. So there's always a pace that different companies have different appetite for. Like a corporate wouldn't want to be having their operations team working on an app for 6 months. But a tech startup does want that. The tech startup will want to get their first version out within 1 month and then test it again. So if they have a 6 months development budget, they will split it up to say, okay, we'll do 6 versions of 1 month each. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. So it depends on your customers lah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Most of them fall in which category? Just do it for me at the end of 3 months or 4 months, or?
Okay, so tech startups would tend to want to do it sooner and then plan for multiple versions because you need to test out the market. Corporates would tend to want to do this on a longer period, so they would spend a little bit more time up front and then upgrade it on, say, on an annual basis. Yeah, we don't recommend anything less than an annual upgrade because the operating system changes on an annual basis.
Government agencies?
Government agencies, that's a very good question. That depends on the purpose of the app. So if the purpose of the app is, let's say, operational, that you want to do this okay, I'm trying to think of some examples, right? Say if you're using it to manage, okay, let me think where I can talk about this here. So there's this actual project, not by us, so we don't know the details of it. They have an app to manage their fish farm, to be able to track and say, what's the temperature of the pond on a daily basis. It charts it out and things like that. So that kind of operational app, even if you don't change it for the next 3 years, that's fine. Yeah, but if it's something that's used by consumers on a daily basis, let's say it's a public transit applications, people check it twice a day to check what time the bus is coming. You don't want to leave that in like 2015, when it's already 2016, because the new technologies, like today, there's this whole bunch of new technologies just got announced. So you want to keep that on par with how technology moves. So one issue there is how fast does technology move? And in mobile, very fast. If you just look at the phone that you're holding onto and texting while we are talking, right? your WhatsApp has changed something like on a monthly basis. Your phone itself is probably no more than 12 months old, probably, right? If you're using your iPhone 6, that's less than 12 months old. If you're using your Samsungs, right, at most, I don't know, 12 to 15 months old. So even your devices are changing. So there's an expectation from mobile consumers that your applications keep up to pace. Yeah, does it help?
So the provisional application comes in when, if you know, if you're a technology startup and you've got many cycles, right? And you don't know which is the cycle where that becomes something valuable that you want to provisionally protect also. How do you balance that then?
So it comes in right then, wherein you think that this idea might just do wonders for you. So that's the time when a provisional application is actually filed. So you can scrap it at the idea level itself. I mean, at the time when they draw the diagrams, they know the flowcharts are ready, it's going to work this way. So you have a technical foundation ready. That's the time when a patent application will come inside.
Even though the technical execution of it can change, it's alright lah. But you just
see, when you file for a patent application, you make it very broad. So we, as patent agents ourselves, we ensure that we cover more than what the inventor told us to cover. So that, you know, in future, if they say that, oh, I changed something, you would still fall under the same application. And just in case you don't, and your improvement is quite major, you can again supplement with another patent application, or you go for utility innovation, wherein it's not inventive, but it's a new thing you're developing or protecting. So that's how IP laws come in picture then.
How do you identify which of the programmer will be the inventor? Because there will be a team of developers, right? Or, you know.
When it comes to Jason, because they are doing commissioned work, per se, they would not qualify as the inventors because they're just executing instructions for somebody else, unless they themselves say, okay, we feel that this part is missing and that will give the punch to your application. So they're actually contributing to enhancing the idea. That's the time when they become inventors. But again, because it's commissioned work, they wouldn't hold any IP rights in it. So who is an inventor? The inventor is a person who actually thought of the idea and also of how it is going to be executed. That person is the inventor.
And they will be different from copyright?
Copyright, yes, different. So copyright would be, it could be, okay, for example, you click a picture, I click a picture, is the same view. We both are copyright authors. So anybody who is producing something in a tangible format would become the copyright author.
Any questions from the floor?
Is there a shelf life? You know how, like with medicine, there's a shelf life and it then becomes generic technology. Is there? Yeah.
Okay, it's for both of us actually, because for mobile applications, I think they go obsolete very fast. I think 1 year is like, it's quite a lot of time for it. So yeah, I think it goes obsolete very fast. So the shelf life is in months.
Okay, so I've got a question as well. So I totally agree that the shelf life for technology has a very short lifespan. You know, if you gotta use it, make an impact quickly, and then move on to the next big thing. But so that's not the patent's shelf life, right? That's the business use case or the technology's shelf life. Does the patent outlast the lifespan of the technology?
Absolutely. That's one question we always ask by software developers, that software goes obsolete very fast, but patent rights take time to actually get granted and enforced. So you have provisions under the patent law to expedite your applications firstly. So within 2 years, you would know whether you're going to get a grant or not a grant. But leaving those issues apart, like I said, patent applications are drafted very broad. Again, going back to the My Taxi application, they are in business since how many years now? 2012, so 3 years. So the app is still running. There may be improvements in the app, but the app is still there. So a patent application is broad enough to handle over the years, like I said. So since the app is still running, by the time the patent application, if you expedite examination, within 2 years would have been a grant or a reject. So patent applications are very broad. They are supposed to handle future improvements by itself.
Any question from the floor? No, I just have one last question for Jason. Is there any like a trade association that represents, apps developers in Malaysia that sort of like champion the rights, answers all the questions? Because I'm sure there are a lot of developers out there with questions that have been raised today. They don't have a platform. Is there anything like that? Do you intend to set one up?
We're coming here to try to meet the right people so that we get protection as well. So the short answer, no, not as far as I know of. Software is as a field, I think there's a lot of room to grow. I mean, as a science, as engineering, it doesn't have the kind of history that civil engineering, mechanical engineering would have. It doesn't have, as a science, it's not as clear as something a biotech would have. So software, as what Megha was saying, is so easy to create and to change that it moves at a tremendously fast pace. So we are probably considered a young industry. They're not that. If you compare the number of software developers around versus the number of engineers around doing civil, you probably see more of engineers than of software developers. It's fast growing, like the technology. It's fast growing. It'll catch up, but it's in a very fluid state, I would say. And all the questions that we raised today, I had 80% of those questions as well. So I had my questions answered today. So we are looking. We welcome the help that we get from in terms of IP protection. We welcome a platform to be able to share what we're doing here today as well. Yeah.
Well, since there are no questions from the floor, I'm just inviting each of the speakers to give their final advice and takeaways, for the participants. So 2 minutes each, and the time starts now.
Okay. Key takeaways from me would be IP is generated automatically at each stage of the software development life cycle. So like I said, you have a lot of IP rights in software as well, starting from copyrights, trade secrets, designs, patent rights, trademarks. So it's up to us to identify at which stage what right is being generated and how do you protect it. So we have to be aware of our IP rights and protect them effectively. So that's all from me, and it's always good to consult a patent agent to understand whether you're utilizing your rights fully or not. IP is important because nowadays, like startups, they're getting acquired by big giants, and it's surprising to know that 80% of the acquisition comes from only their intangible or the IP portfolios. When Google bought over Motorola, they had 1,100 patent applications which got bought over for $1 billion deal. It only came from the patent portfolio. Similarly, when WhatsApp was taken by Facebook, they only bought over the money came only from the trademark WhatsApp. They only had a pending patent application, which had per se no value, but the whole money came in from the word WhatsApp itself. So trademark is also important. So per se, we have to be aware of our IP rights and generate our IP portfolios. So thank you so much for having me. Jason, over to you.
Okay, so confession, I actually came into the conference when they asked me to share about apps and IP. I was going to say, IP, don't need lah. You build your app first when it gains traction, then look at IP. We've heard stories about people who spent, and this is real life, people I've met, people with great ideas, who spent, I know a particular case where they spent 6 months trying to sort out the legal paperwork. In the meantime, 3 other competitors have launched while they were busy with the patents. So I came in with a strong opinion where IP, secondary to business. You get your business, you get your traction first. As I understand IP better now, I realize that I'm probably wrong in that stand. Now I realize that the value of IP comes during the ideation and the creation of the process. I still take a stand where you have to still solve a business issue. If you spend 6 months working on legal without working on the product, you're probably in trouble. But they go hand in hand, and so I guess now, as I understand it better, it'll be start working on your IP. Don't let it hold back your business issue. Don't let it hold you back from meeting with people and solving the problems. But don't ignore it also, because by the time you actually gain traction and you take off, it might be too late. So thank you for having me here. Thank you for hearing us out. Yeah.
Frida, back to you.
Thank you so much, Megha, Jason, of course, Ginny, for moderating this session. We'll be heading off for lunch. It's at Ballroom A where you had your meeting earlier on. The next session, the training session, begins at 2 p.m. So until then, do come back on time if you're coming on so that everything happens on time. So thank you. We'll see you then.